It looks like we are at the top of the hour, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with the Create webinar for this week. Welcome everyone to the Create webinar series. My name is Ken Walls. I'm the Executive Director for Create, and it's a pleasure to be with you all here today. Today's presentation is going to be presented by Daniel Castano, who will be talking about powering the future, transforming solar project workflows with technology. Before we dive into the presentation and introduce Daniel, for folks that are just logging in, I would invite you to type your name and your background and affiliation in the chat menu so that Daniel has a little bit of an idea who his audience is today. Let me also just cover a few bases here before we begin. This presentation will be recorded. Once we start the presentation, your microphones and cameras will be muted. And then at the end of the presentation, those will be activated again so that you have a chance to ask questions. If you have questions during the presentation, feel welcome to type those into the chat box, and I'll try to field those for our speaker. You can either chat them to everyone if you like to have your questions shared with the whole group, or if you'd rather just send them to me individually if you want to remain anonymous, that's okay too. The recording for this webinar will be posted on the Create Energy Center website, which is just createenergy.org, where you'll be able to view this recording as well as recording from all of our previous webinar events. And while you're there, we encourage you to sign up for the Create email list if you're not already on it, so that you get notified of future events. Speaking of future events, I just wanted to take a quick moment to note that we have several faculty workshops planned for this summer in North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Delaware. You can see those listed here along with their dates, and there are still open seats available in each of those workshops for this summer. You can find more information about them on the Create website. And then I will also give a quick plug for the High Tech Conference, which is July 24th through 27th in Atlanta, Georgia. Create will be sending a delegation of faculty to that conference and hosting a number of presentations. And our speaker today, Daniel from Scanifly, will also be at the High Tech Conference, leading a special session there that will also include an opportunity to fly some drones and do some hands-on work with Scanifly's software, which I'm sure he will describe a little bit as part of his presentation. So we hope that some of you might be able to join us at that event in Atlanta, July 24th through 27th. Our speaker is Daniel Castano from Scanifly. Scanifly is leading the movement to incorporate drones, 3D software, and technology into residential and commercial solar project development. And these tools can reduce time on site by up to 90% while providing high precision and quality control for solar projects. Daniel oversees the educational content for the Scanifly Academy, and he teaches both online and in-person classes for solar professionals. Prior to joining Scanifly, Daniel worked for several other solar contractors in the areas of site evaluation, design, and operations. He is a NABCEP PV associate and an FAA Part 107 drone pilot. And in his free time, he enjoys flying drones and exploring the great outdoors. So welcome, Daniel. I'm going to turn control over to you, and thank you for joining us today for being our presenter.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's a great privilege to be here. I feel very, very passionate about education. I feel like I always have, but especially with renewable energy and solar energy, this is definitely something that I feel very, very passionate, and it's really like my duty on this planet, right? To just make sure that we spread all this training and make sure that everybody has access to the things that we need to make sure that we can meet all these renewable goals. So thanks for that introduction. Again, my name is Daniel Castano, and today we're going to be discussing the what we need to power the future, transforming the solar project workflow with using technology. And primarily, we're going to be talking about drones, which are this small nowadays for professional drones. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this presentation. So just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen. I could get a
Yep, we can
thumbs
see
up.
it, Daniel. Looks good.
All right, perfect. Okay. And as Ken said, if you have any questions, please be sure to either write it in the chat, or I know there's a Q&A section as well, sometimes in these Zoom presentations, and I'll go ahead and answer them towards the end. So to talk a little bit about solar, once you close a deal, the salesperson talks to a homeowner and they know that the next step is to sign that contract. Once you sign that contract, you are shown, or in order to sign that contract, you are shown a preliminary design, which usually uses remote data, but that remote data isn't always the most accurate. So you have to send somebody on site to do a manual site survey. Now, this doesn't just include getting measurements from the roof. It also includes actually going inside of the house and taking a look at the electrical equipment, taking a look into the attic and making sure that structurally you can place these solar panels on them safely, and how exactly you're going to be placing them safely on that roof. This was my job for about 3.5 years, by the way, was doing this whole process. And then once you're done with these two parts of the survey, you get your graphing paper, you get your tape measure, set up your ladder, tie yourself into the roof if you're doing things safely, and start measuring and drawing this roof out so that your designers know for a fact that your solar system is going to actually fit on this roof. Now, there are other elements to it, like you should be doing a shade analysis as well, just to make sure that everything is going to produce like you promised the customer that it would. And you also want to make sure that there are certain things like no damage on the roof or on the inside or anything like that. Now, as I mentioned, using remote imagery is a very, very useful tool when designing. Usually this means some combination of Google Maps or other software that uses satellite imagery. But just like this image shows, sometimes you have new construction. And so you don't have the most up-to-date imagery. You can see across the street that we have several homes that were already built. This is what you would usually design on. Again, you don't have as much detail as you would probably like, but also you face the possibility that it is outdated. Maybe in certain situations, there are trees that have grown, or maybe it captured a certain area during the winter when deciduous trees have lost their leaves. So here we have this example of new construction, how that could be a challenge for designers. For assessors, it would be a challenge as well. Something that a lot of people don't think about is the elements, right? And it's not just snow, rain, and sometimes the intense heat could make things really, really difficult to work on site safely. And then there's the actual aspect of measuring out the roof. So for example, with this vent pipe on the far left, the best way to make sure that you are recording this as a surveyor so that you can pass it on to your designers to get a measurement from one end, either the top or the bottom, and then the side, right? So you create kind of like a grid system so that you get those two measurements. And you have to do that for every single vent pipe on the roof, or this is a dryer vent. Here we have this skylight, which not only would you have to do that for, you also have to get all of these measurements so that, again, you're passing everything from what's going on in the site onto paper, and then your designer does it on a computer. So this is where Scanifly comes in, right? Instead of getting this 2D image, you are getting a full picture context view of what is actually happening out on site in real life. As you can see here, that satellite image versus the actual slope of the roof and all of these little features, all of these trees and the actual shade impact that they'll have on the site just becomes very quickly apparent. And the way that you create these 3D models is a relatively quick and easy process using drones. I was a hobbyist for quite a few years. Just before I got into drones, I was flying RC helicopters for a couple of years. And I remember being blown away by the fact that now they have 4 propellers and they're so steady. And then over time, they started coming out with all of these automated flight paths. And that is what we use here. So you essentially are flying 2 circles around a property, the context flight and the detail flight. The context flight is here in red and the detail flight is in blue. One circle is significantly larger and higher up in altitude, and the other is a lot lower and a smaller or tighter radius around the property. These 2 circles, which you're seeing a flight time lapse here of, gets you all of the pictures that you need in order to create a 3D model. And that's what we use. We use these photographs. I mentioned that we have these automated flight paths. So you're not manually flying these circles. You're literally flying over to the center of the structure, dropping a GPS pin right on your remote, and then flying out, framing the shot and hitting go. And you start taking those pictures automatically every 2 seconds or so. And this is done using a process called photogrammetry. Photogrammetry uses these pictures that are taken, so still images, along with some back-end metadata, which includes in these drones or even on your phone, it includes a GPS location of where those pictures were taken. These pixels and the EXIF data are then used with photogrammetry software to line them up to make this 3D model, which we then are using for solar design purposes. Traditionally, when photogrammetry first started becoming well known, these giant rigs were being set up. So each of these giant arms have about 12 cameras on them, and there's about 12 of these arms. So you have 144 different cameras snapping a picture all at once from different angles. And then the computer software is putting all of those angles together to create a 3D model, which in this case was 3D printed. So again, photogrammetry is the art and science of extracting 3D information from 2D photographs. Now, we're not going to use 144 drones all around a property trying to get different angles. We're going to use just 1 drone and 100+ pictures. And this is a pretty good representation of what that looks like. This is an actual model from my buddy's place in Colorado. I flew it flying that context flight, which captured everything from the trees around it, a little bit of the neighbors' houses, and just everything that we needed for a solar project. And then the detail flight picks up on some of those key details that you don't quite capture from further out, just to make sure that that quality remains crystal clear. Now, drones are about 40 to 50 feet above the actual house itself. When you are getting measurements from things like airplanes, which may have special devices on them, you're still looking at about 4,000 feet up in the air, and satellites are over 2 million feet in lower atmosphere, right? So, or lower orbit. So the quality of the accuracy is significantly greater with drones. And so the measurements that you get with our software is accurate down to 1 to 3 inches. So essentially, for solar business, what this means is what you get in your design process is what you will actually get on site, which is a huge deal in solar, because if you mess up these designs and plans, then you need to go back, resubmit permitting documents. You have a whole team of installers just standing out wondering why they can't install on this thing or what they're going to do. You have to deal with a customer, and it's a whole thing to go through a change order that nobody, neither the client nor the company, wants to go through. So we want to avoid this as much as possible. And again, here are some of these situations where you've got satellite imagery, and it's very, very different experience having the 3D model where you can account for shading from these upper levels, where you can more closely see what these obstructions are, whether they're temporary obstructions or actual permanent obstructions that you won't be able to avoid. In the case of that image that I showed you all in the beginning with that new construction, this was a model flown for that exact same site. This is the top-down angle. We also can manipulate that whole 3D model and move it around to be able to see all these different angles, which again, show us so much more context, like the electrical being here. We'll be able to measure along the walls, not just the roof planes as well. Here we have a situation where we have this satellite imagery, but we can't quite take into account the height of this church that was right next to this area. Right now, with the 3D model, we can actually simulate that shade and see exactly how much of that planned system is going to be impacted by the shade of on-site obstructions. Once you have that model in our 3D design software, you can measure the site completely using a digital tape measure, and that's literally done by just clicking one end of the roof and then the other. We have protractor tools. You can measure the obstructions themselves. You can measure trees on site and find out how tall they actually are. And all of this can also be done automatically throughout the design process. But if you need specific measurements, we have all of those tools here. This is really, really useful because once you have one team member head out to site, which again is what I used to do, now all of my team could have access to this site without actually having to drive 20 minutes out, 25 minutes out, and then 20 or 25 minutes back, plus the time on site. And that's called a truck roll. So more truck rolls, that's more of an impact that businesses have on their margins. Next thing here is a safety related thing. So if you have these sites that have some snow on the roof, which is very, very dangerous, you can fly the drone with some snow on it. We've had a couple of projects where they've had quite a bit of snow on it. Pretty much what we tell people is if you can't see the obstructions, then you'll probably want to wait a little bit for that snow to melt. But if you can see the obstructions and you can map out your design, taking those into account, then you're good to go. And then we have our qualitative and quantitative shade analysis tools. So with this proprietary technology, you are able to place view sheds on any location on this 3D space, which obviously includes the roof. And we have qualitative measurements so that you can quantify and visually see what effect all of these different parts of the property are going to cause any shading on your system. This allows us to then accurately create production analysis for these systems and give customers a much better idea of how much their system is actually going to produce. A lot of you may be familiar with the Solmetric SunEye. This is an amazing tool. I definitely used it a ton and it has helped our industry move forward significantly. There are some downsides to it. One is if you're in a giant commercial space, it would take a long time to have to place this SunEye on different locations to make sure that you were quantifying and taking into account all of the different possible scenarios that could occur with different shade causing obstructions, right? If you use the SunEye over here, it's probably going to give you a very different result than if you use the SunEye on this part of the roof. Not to mention that in the winter, if you have these deciduous trees that aren't showing any leaves, the SunEye might not quite recognize the full extent of the effect that that canopy could have on that system in the winter, in the summertime, once those leaves grow back. Another cool thing about our software is that once you have that 3D model of the home, you can actually use that entire space as a 3D canvas. So whether you need to remove trees, this is our occluder tool, or if you need to add trees to make sure that you take into account all of the leaves, for example, in a tree that may have had their leaves shed over the fall and winter. So you don't need to actually cut down a tree and then do your shade analysis to see the impact. You can remove it digitally and see what that would be without actually having to spend all that money cutting down a tree or unnecessarily cutting down an entire tree when just a part of it could have made a significant impact on the system. So why is this all so important? And why am I telling you all of this? So solar is a really fast growing industry, and having enough trained professionals to fill these jobs is very key. If we are to meet these ambitious goals of being carbon neutral as a country and a planet, we need to have a trained workforce that's ready to help make that happen. I read an article the other day that said over the course of the next 10 years, we're going to need 500,000 new workers in the solar industry in order to meet these goals. So that's a lot of people. And hopefully we can train people to do these workflows and execute these workflows in a really effective manner. But also we want to be able to give access to these jobs to people who need it. We have found that if a solar professional has their Part 107, which is their FAA commercial drone pilot certificate, NABCEP credential or credits, their OSHA, which is a safety certification, and throw in all of our certified training, they are going to be well positioned to make $17 to $22 an hour with these surveying positions. And this is something that Scanifly and I'm sure all of you are really, really passionate about. We have worked over the past 4 years with a variety of schools in a variety of capacities. We've hosted webinars alongside SEI for 1,200 people over 85 countries. And we've been working very closely with NABCEP to provide all of this certified training material for design and surveying. And then built our Scanifly Academy to share this all with the industry. So real quick, I want to make sure that we have time for questions and a little bit of a software demo as well. I do want to tell you all about this Scanifly Academy training that we've built out and currently offer to anybody who's interested in any of this training. Right now, we are offering 2 courses. You see 3 because this is a self-paced option. So we do have that too, but they are hosted in live webinars, much like this one. Next week, we will have the Surveyor Associate program on Monday and Tuesday. It's 2 hours each day from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And then Thursday and Friday, we will have the Advanced Surveyor program, again, from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And they will just be live webinars just like this. The Surveyor Associate program covers Part 107, what that is, drones, photography, and photogrammetry. So everything you need to know about capturing great pictures and creating great 3D models, how to build a solar drone program, and then some assistance with preparing for the Part 107 license. I've mentioned this a few times. This is a license that you need in order to be able to fly drones for commercial purposes. And so it's something great to have on a resume, and that whole bit that I told you all about truck rolls and all of the potential expenses and the impact on margins that it can have on a business is why having something like this in a specialized field like solar is in demand and will make these businesses want to hire people with these marketable skills. We don't offer everything that you need to pass the Part 107. We do, but it's not as structured. We do have a ton of free resources, but if you want a nice structured program that includes everything that you need to know, we have partnered with Drone Pilot Ground School. Their course usually costs about $300. If you type in Scanifly as a discount code, that cost goes down to $100. So you don't need to use our product or anything. If you or anyone you know wants to get their Part 107 certificate, you can just use our discount code for Drone Pilot Ground School and take advantage of that discount. And full disclaimer, we don't make any money off of that. This is something that we were able to discuss with them so that we can keep training more professionals in our industry. And then the Advanced Surveyor Program. Sorry, my Siri gets activated sometimes. For the Advanced Surveyor Program, we dive a lot deeper into the actual survey process. We start out with drones and PV design, of course, how to really make excellent 3D models using photogrammetry. But then we also go into a lot more detail about the electrical analysis, the structural analysis, and the safety component. We do have certain requirements for both of these courses to get our certification. So it's not as simple as just watching these 4 classes. You would have to pass a final exam at the end, and each one is paired with another certification. So in order to get this certificate, you need your Part 107 license, and to get this one, you would need the OSHA 10. We talk about everything in those classes, and if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to me at learn@scanifly.com. Now, this is, again, just a quick overview of the advanced course. We go over how to perfect this workflow and incorporate it, but then also going into all of these electrical gathering information, like what photographs you need and why you need them. We dive into inverters and some of the latest technology for tying into these electrical systems, as well as how to actually gather them, what best angles to get all of these pictures. And then going into that attic and a bit of that structural engineer-esque kind of information, and how to gather that information and why you are gathering that information. And of course, safety, because one of the key things that Scanifly cares about is making sure that we keep people off the roof as much as possible. And if you do have to get up on the roof, that you're doing it safely. So we've decided to pair our certificate with that OSHA one. So our plan now is to work with academic institutions, vocational schools, and training programs around the US and beyond, so that we can formally provide curriculum materials and software access. We want to be able to work with you all and provide you with any resources and access to all of these materials so that you're better equipped to train the future of solar professionals on all of this future technology. I could go on about Scanifly for days, but I don't want to turn this into an infomercial. Again, this is just a huge passion project of ours to meet these ambitious goals. And I'm more than happy to give you all a software demo if we have enough time, but I do also want to make sure that we prioritize any questions that you all may have. So I'd like to welcome Ken back into the conversation. Thanks for giving me all this time.
Thank you, Daniel. That's some amazing stuff that you have there. It makes me think, you know, I've talked with a lot of contractors and they always tell us that customer acquisition is a really, you know, costly and time intensive activity for them. And they might do 5 or 10 site visits and solar assessments for every one actual installation that they, you know, signed a contract. And it seems like, you know, a quick flyover with your software and your drone could, you know, filter out a lot of projects that would be ineligible because they have, you know, a poor roof or lousy shade conditions without ever having to actually even enter the building and look at the electrical panel or dive into the customer's utility bills. You know, this could be a big time saver for a lot of folks in the industry.
Certainly, yeah. And again, to be able to better provide information to the customers as well, it could really make that final decision of like, hey, look, we're taking into account every single aspect of what could potentially cause your system to not perform as you expect it to.
I wanted to follow up. I got one question from somebody that sent me in the chat, and just make sure that we heard you correctly. Did you say that the accuracy of your software is within about 1 to 3 inches on roof measurements?
Yeah, that's correct. 1 to 3 inches, and that's officially, so what we usually experience is that they are spot on within an inch, which is why we like to say, like, what this means is what you design is what you're going to get.
Oh, that's pretty incredible, because I think that's more accurate than our students would be with a tape measure, to tell you the truth, especially if they're doing it on a day when it's cold in Wisconsin winter,
For sure, for sure. And that's definitely one of our selling points too. It's like there's human error all the time. You're on a roof and it's not the most comfortable place to hang out and take measurements and draw a roof on.
And I know you mentioned your software had a protractor function. So does that mean you can determine the roof pitch as well? And how
Right.
accurate is it able to do that?
It's down to a degree. And as I mentioned, we have that tool, but if I could just share my screen here again, I'd love to show you what this workflow actually looks like. So we've got a house here. And let's say we want to take advantage of this big roof plane right here. We'd start by outlining the roof. And we wouldn't even take the measurements one by one or get the protractor tool out. We really would start by just outlining this roof plane. And then all of those factors are just going to be provided automatically for us. So once we select the azimuth, we've got every single measurement along with the pitch of the roof, which here it's in degrees, 33.1 degrees, and we have the azimuth 61.8 degrees. And that was a little bit faster than if I would have had to get up on that roof and measure all of that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, far faster. That's pretty incredible.
And then from the designer's standpoint, another cool thing is you can just go to exports, and then we've got all these CAD files. You could download a 2D wireframe or a 3D wireframe, and all of these measurements and outlines and everything will just automatically be exported onto CAD, and you're good to go for all of your permit documents as well.
Another question for you, Daniel. You mentioned that your software will take into account trees and that you could model tree removal or pruning. Is it also possible to model future tree growth? Like if there's a young tree and you anticipate it, getting taller over time?
That's a very thoughtful question and a very good one as well. So yes, you can account for that. I think I should just keep my screen shared here so I can keep showing you all of our features as you ask about them. So we have this import tree models feature. So if we select the tree, let's say it's a deciduous long trunk, we'll seed it here. Let's say, again, we had a very small tree, but we expect it to grow. Just plant it. And now we can have that shade be incorporated into that simulation, both qualitative and quantitative information, so that you can estimate how that will impact the property. And you could scale this as well. So if we go down back to that import models tab, we can make it smaller, thinner. We can move it around to different locations as well if we need to.
Oh, that's pretty great, because if you're thinking about planting a tree, now you can decide where you're going to put it so that it doesn't impact your solar system, right?
Exactly, exactly.
I can see where that would be really helpful if you're doing some landscape design for say a new house that's being constructed, because you're usually going to be planting trees when you're doing a new house as well. So
for sure. And this is a little bit off topic, but photogrammetry is being used by so many industries, and landscaping is one of them for that very same reason, because You could show somebody some photographs, but having this actual 3D model to show people how it's actually going to look, it's the same thing with the solar panels, right? I haven't highlighted the keep outs, so it's going to place them on all of them, but being able to actually see what they would look like makes a significant difference. And you can see here, we have a whole entire module library. So you can input all of the information for all of the different models of modules that you use. And again, use that information to create better production analysis. Now, Ken, if you don't mind me taking this question here, I see somebody asked to clarify the Scanifly software is drone agnostic, meaning
I was just gonna share a similar question that they asked, is a certain type of drone required? So I think a couple people sort of on the same wavelength there.
Awesome. So we are drone agnostic. So you can use any drone that meets certain requirements. I mentioned that we need GPS. So I'm going to pull up some slides here just to kind of help me with some visuals. Here we go. Okay. So the key thing is that it has to have built-in GPS. And most drones that you find from DJI, for example, have this feature. Yes, here we go. So we have, again, as long as it's got a camera, it's got a flight controller with the GPS, that way it can tag that coordinate location, then you should be able to use it with Scanifly. This is a Autel Evo 2 Pro, a completely different manufacturer of drone. DJI has many different models like the Phantom series and the Mavic Air 2 series. All of those drones can be used. Now there is a slight difference in the workflow, right? So for example, the Mavic 2 Pro has those automated circle flight paths, which are certainly helpful, so you don't have to fly things manually. So does the Autel and the Mavic Air 2 series. Also the interval timer, taking pictures automatically. Otherwise, you're stuck actually physically tapping that button, which isn't a huge deal. And some of our customers do that. For example, the Mavic Air 2S doesn't have the interval timer, and plenty of our customers still use it. But it's a great way of reducing the barrier to entry and allowing companies to be able to remain nimble with the technology that they choose for the drone. And let's see, I was going to say something else. We do also highly recommend for high volume surveying, if you're doing 3 to 5 surveys a day, that you get one of these combo packs. And just for some more perspective, these tools can range from $1,300 for the Mavic Air 2 combo pack to $2,300 for the Autel series. And then I'll also write into chat, we have a full list of recommended drones, which is color coded and everything. So you'll be able to actually see green, yellow, and red, which ones we recommend most, which ones we don't recommend, and then why we don't recommend them. And I'll go ahead and post this in the chat if anyone has more interest in that.
Daniel, both a comment and a question. One comment was that somebody said they like that an installation team can view the images of the site before actually going to the job site. And that just makes me think that that really probably helps to plan the work to make sure that you get the right tools and equipment to the job site on day one. It also makes me think of a friend of mine who had a job as a house painter when he was in college, and he told me one time showed up to a job site just to find that the crew was actually painting the neighbor's house instead of the one where they were supposed to be.
No.
So you can imagine where actually having the image of the actual house where the system's supposed to go shared with the entire team and as part of the documentation would be really helpful. And then the question that came across was, are there functions in the software that could be used for operations and maintenance, like, for example, thermal imaging of a system that's already installed to see if it's performing correctly?
So thermal imaging is something that we've heard a lot of feedback about. People who, if they're going to get a drone, they might as well get a thermal drone so they can use it for O&M. And we are doing some R&D on that front. In the meantime, all that we have is this albums folder, which you can have images for electrical and structural data gathering, but then also general maintenance, installation and commissioning, and then of course thermal. So you can at least have all of these images in one place. That way you can reference them and then go back into the model if you really need to, or at least keep all of your information in one software instead of having to be jumping around so much.
And of the drones on the list you provided, do some of those drones come equipped with an infrared camera, or is an infrared camera an option that can be added to them?
So I know that the Autel series and especially the Evo 2 Pro series and the DJI Mavic 2 Enterprise both have thermal images. They are not in that list, or sorry, thermal imaging cameras. They're not on that list, and they are additional options that can do both. So that is a great thing about it. If you get the Autel one with the thermal camera installed, you can also use that for Scanifly. And again, for right now, we don't necessarily have anything that ties the two in, so we don't include that much information on it in the in that document. But as things progress and we continue to add more features, which I guess is a good time to mention, not only is drone agnostic a great selling point, but the fact that we are solar specific. So there are other companies, like I mentioned, there's photogrammetry is being used by landscapers. Well, we are not trying to diversify into other industries. We want to stay within solar, specifically because we have a calling towards it. Like most of us are previous solar people, including our founders, but also every new feature that comes out is meant to improve that solar workflow. And that's really part of our ethos here at the company.
Daniel, with your imaging and software, are you able to determine different roofing materials? Like, can it tell the difference between, say, asphalt shingles and a slate roof versus standing seam metal roof? It looks like you probably can, but
certainly, yeah. And I mean, besides just physically being able to see the model, if you go into this drone images tab, you'll have access to the full resolution images, and you could zoom in real close and really take a good look at all of these obstructions and even the roof quality. There are some scenarios where you could fly significantly lower and just gather that those images as well.
yeah, that is pretty amazing detail that you're able to get there. And if it's an older roof that maybe is compromised or has existing damage or is in need of repair, are you able to diagnose that sometimes with the images as well?
Certainly, and it wouldn't be inside the actual model. I think that's where we would go into the albums. While I was on site, these flights, by the way, the automated flight paths take anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes. 8 minutes if you're more experienced, 12 if you're not really all that experienced. So it's done really, really, really quickly. And
20 minutes if you're a community college instructor, right?
There you go. But there are additional photographs that you can take that you wouldn't upload into our software, right? Like I would usually like to include a top-down shot just to have while I was on the site, right? So I would just save it to my phone and be able to annotate on it, let people know, let the team know, okay, here's the location. Actually, I don't know. All right, so here's the location of the electrical. Just draw a little square on my phone and write main service panel, right? So along with those images, one would be like if we were going to do it on this roof plane, a nice close-up shot of the actual shingle, so that we can have a really high resolution image and you could see the fiberglass. I mean, it's the difference between going up there with your phone and taking a close-up picture of it is that this will probably have higher resolution than your actual phone. So you certainly can use it to, I mean, cracked tiles are easy to recognize from a distance, but with the asphalt shingles, you want to make sure that you can, like, is it a little bit of asphalt that's missing, or can you full on see the fiberglass? And you should probably repair that as soon as possible. Yeah, so what you're seeing here as well, somebody in the chat mentioned a stick, and I don't know if this is what they're referring to, but we actually would want to outline these keep outs. So I didn't quite finish the workflow. We have these automatic keep outs here that will allow us to outline at least the vast majority of, or quite a few of these, and we are working on improving this, but you can also manually go around and outline all of these areas that we don't want to design on. And you'll see in just a moment that we can just move around the, let's go over here. For those of you really into solar, there's also really cool features like being able to set fire setbacks. So this is fire code for emergency responders to be able to walk along the roof in case of an emergency. Let's say sometimes it's 36 inches along the ridge. You just type in those 36 inches on the areas where you need that space. And when you're ready to actually place your mods on the roof, let's go use the black on black modules. They will go ahead and already avoid all of those keep out areas. And you can move it around and see that dynamically, it'll just adjust to what you need it to do or what you're hoping to do and let you know if it actually is possible or not. Same thing with landscape and portrait, or if you want to switch over to manual, you can say, all right, well, let's delete these two and see if we could sneak a couple of landscape mods in here. And sure enough, you could fit two, so it's not really going to make a difference. We'd probably want to go back to that design.
So Daniel, I know you said that the software has a database that allows you to select specific modules and presumably calls up the spec sheets for those. Does the software do string sizing as well then?
So just to clarify, the module library is not done automatically. We have some in there, but they are done by the companies themselves. So usually there's a handful of mods that each company will use, and you just input it one time and you can either favorite them to adjust the order so you have your most used ones available. And then we provide the textures and you can input the sizes and everything. For inverters, I believe I'd have to add some view sheds here. So this is what I was saying about doing that shade analysis all remotely, but we are approved as an on-site shade analysis by all of the major regulators in the United States because we are using information that is actually found on site. So I place these view sheds here, and now this is going to allow me to pull all of the solar access information along with the production analysis. And this is important because this is where you would adjust the inverter parameters, right? So if you're using micro inverters, you would just increase the inverter efficiency to 99, decrease the mismatch variable down to 1 or 0, depending on how conservative you want to be. And this is the same tool that PV Watts uses. We actually pull it from that. So anything that you would do in PV Watts, you would make that adjustment here in order to make sure that you're getting the most accurate production analysis.
I just want to respect your time, Daniel, and we've got about 10 minutes left, and just ask anybody else if they have any remaining questions that they'd like to ask.
Certainly, yeah. Happy to help. And if anybody has any questions after, if they're shy, you can always reach me at learn@scanifly.com. And I'm always happy to talk solar, education, drones, or Scanifly.
I'm not seeing any more questions coming through, so let me just give one more pitch for the upcoming High Tech Conference in July. Daniel will be joining us at the High Tech Conference. He'll be both presenting and then leading a drone flying exercise there. And if you're able to attend and bring a laptop with you, we should have the opportunity to use some of the software and play with it to do a little bit of modeling. I'm sure that this is going to be of interest to a lot of people. I know I've already been talking with Joel Shoemaker about how we can start integrating this into our program here at Madison College. I know we're both eager to get our hands on a drone and see if we can't start teaching some of this to our students. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other schools that feel the same way. So hopefully some folks are able to join us at that event in Georgia. Coming up in July. And I'll just remind folks that if you would like to get more information about the High Tech Conference or about any of our workshops or future webinar events, you can check out our website at createenergy.org for additional information. And with that said, Daniel, thank you for your presentation today, and we'll look forward to talking more soon.
Thank you very much. It was very educational. See you in Atlanta.
See you in Atlanta. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Daniel.
Nice to see you, Joel.
Good to see you.
Bye, everyone.
I'm just looking to see if I can stop the recording. It doesn't look like I can, but I presume it will stop when we log off, Daniel, and then we'll trim off the garbage time in the front and the back end. We'll get this posted to the Create website in the next week or so. This is great. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks around the country that'll be interested in this. And I can tell just from the questions that we got from the room that there's going to be people interested in joining us at High Tech. So
Yeah. Yeah.
The more I learn about the work you guys are doing, I just see that this is going to change the way our students work in the industry. You know, we're probably just on the very tip of that iceberg right now, but you can tell the technology is there and the price is going to come down. This is going to happen fast, right? Like it's going to be embraced by everyone in the industry, because if you don't go this way, the competition's going to, beat you to all of the customers.
Right. Right. Yeah, there were some customers that wanted exclusivity to it in an area because they didn't want competitors to get their hands on it, So no, I'm very excited too. And the questions were really, really thoughtful. You could tell that people are on board and thinking about these things in the right way. So really excited for it all. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi there, Ed. I think you've been working with some drones at Arizona, right?
Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I did a couple of, how are you? Good to see you.
Hi, good to
I'm
see you.
still working on my advanced surveyor deal. I'm almost done with it by the recording one. Thanks.
Awesome. You're welcome.
We just did 2 drone outreach deals for tribal communities the last 2 weeks. And we have another one scheduled with the Navajo Nation on the 19th. So it's part of a Native American Ag Fund grant that we have here at the U of A. So I'm working with our federally recognized tribal extension programs. We have about 15 of those agents. And so we've done 4 different presentations to different tribal communities so far. A lot of positive results, and yeah, we're hoping to build on it.
That's awesome, Ed. What drone are you flying again?
Well, I'm flying a Phantom 4 V2 and then an Inspire 1, and then a colleague of mine has he has a latest Inspire 3 and a Mavic 2. So
Okay.
we're showing them mapping skills with drone deploy, and then each of the FERTEP centers, part of the grant, picked up a DJI Mini 2. So we're showing the instructors how to use those. The last one we did last week, we had some students as young as 7, 8, and 9 actually flying those little drones. And then of course they want to jump on the Phantom, and I thought my Phantom was gonna go. I had to bring the controls back in. We were, right next to Highway 66, and I thought, oh man, my drone's gonna wind up in the cab of the truck if I don't take control. So yeah, a little bit of fun with those, but the kids really like it. They get on it, and then of course the adults were trying to, they get a lot of questions about 107, and they want to see how they can integrate it into, what they're doing with livestock.
Yeah, I think, at least where you're at, Ed, it's pretty warm year round. You don't have to deal with snow cover and crawling on roofs, but I can see enormous potential for this in Wisconsin, because 4 months out of the year, crawling around on the roof to make measurements is pretty hazardous,
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'll have to show you the picture of my house. We had snow here March 2nd, and my array, it's on my roof, is almost near flat. I have a flat roofed house, 4-degree tilt, and they followed that. And I've got pictures of me brooming off 3 inches of snow off of that. And everybody's like, why are you doing it? I go, because I said, it's not going to be colder that day with the brighter sun. I'm going to miss out on peak performance if I don't get that off. And so I was scrubbing all that snow off there just to, because it was so intense that day. And I got some maximum on the curve that day.
Nice.
Well, with that little bit of field experience under your belt, now you're ready to overwinter in Wisconsin whenever you like. We've got quite a few panels behind me at 10 degrees pitch that can use that treatment. So
yeah, that's about what my layout looks like. Not quite as expansive, but it's like that. I had to get a real long handled, sweeper to get all that stuff off there. So yeah. Like I have more appreciation for what people up north in Wisconsin have to do that. Yeah, especially when it's not tilted very much.
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, I was going to ask you too, would you be able to share your slides? Are those available for us to post on the website?
I will ask Jason.
Okay.
And then we should be able to, I shortened it significantly. I talked with Gabby, and she said to try to keep it within like the 25 minutes so that we could have time for questions in the demo. And I'm kind of glad that I did, but
yeah, I think that was good advice. Yeah.
Awesome.
And even if you need to, clean up the slides or whatever, if there's stuff that you don't want to post there, but if you have some that you're willing to provide, we'll post them with the video.
Awesome. I actually was thinking of maybe giving you the longer version, and again I'll talk to Jason, but that way it has a little bit more information. Like it would have answered the whole like the drone agnostic stuff and things like that.
Well, you guys can decide what you think is appropriate, and if you have a file that you're able to share, we'll post it up there.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good.
And then one other thing for you, did you see the form that I sent you the other day from the conference with the drone flight permission thing?
Yes, so I'll start filling that out as soon as possible. We can go ahead and pay the $100 that should.
Does that work? And then we can just reimburse you and reimburse you for the expenditures too?
Certainly.
Okay, that's faster than if I have to run it through my college and get a PO and everything. We'll be waiting around for a couple of weeks for a lousy $100.
Yeah. No, we'll go ahead and take care of that. I'm just gonna do a couple of checks with airspace and just make sure that everything is set. Look at Google Maps and make sure that I can pick out a specific area for it. But it really shouldn't take up too much space. Like we've done it in a couple of parking lots in the past outside of like convention centers. And mostly we're just going to be teaching them like the basic controls, moving it side to side, yaw and throttle, and then doing a single POI around something, whether it's a tree or a post or whatever.
That sounds great.
Awesome.
I've had a lot of people express interest already in attending that session, so I'm glad we managed to get it on the conference agenda. So
Awesome. Yeah, I'll send it to you first thing either Monday or Tuesday, because we're launching some stuff. I didn't mention this, but are you all familiar with Credly?
no.
So Credly does badges, like NABCEP uses them, and
Oh, okay.
great business model for them. All they do is like host a page for you that says, this is the badge and this is what it certifies. And then you give them tons of money. But we gave them money. And so now we're more official and it'll appear on people's LinkedIn and stuff if they get
Oh,
our
okay.
trainings.
Oh,
and
nice.
whatnot.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, now I got to get going on my training so that I can get my Credly badge on my
There you
LinkedIn page. Well, hey, it sounds good. Thanks again so much for doing the webinar, and we'll be in touch and talk more soon.